welcome to the RetroLogic Community Crossplay. I am your host for tonight, Sam Wagers, aka the third strongest mole, aka the third strongest co-host of the RetroLogic podcast. And tonight we are talking about Castlevania Bloodlines on the Sega Genesis. With me is Philip, aka Flightsy, and Sammy, aka Galaxy Wolf.
Hello.
How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good.
It's good to hear. Good to hear.
I found a random post-it in a box in the basement that said something that had like a website on it. So I'm looking forward to figuring out where that goes later. What's that?
Okay, so on to the topic at hand, Castlevania Bloodlines. This game originally released March 19th, 1994 on the Sega Genesis. Have either of you played this before, or is this your first time playing? We'll start with you, Philip.
Well, this is my first time playing. I have not played this before. In fact, this is my first Castlevania. Should I tell them how much I played? Is that necessary?
Yeah, sure. How far did you make it?
So I made it around halfway through the game before I realized like I had an issue with lives and that there was really no way to get any more continues back, and I was kind of stuck with mostly with what I had. And if you just run out of continues, you're just done. Start the whole game over. So then I reset and got halfway through the game again, save scumming, and then after that, Sammy, Galaxy Wolf told me about the cheat that lets you have infinite continues, basically. So then I reset again and played with that, and then I beat the game twice. And then I played halfway through the game a third time to prove a point, which we'll get to later in the video, in the thing.
All right. Sammy, how about you? Is this the first time you've played this game?
Yes, it is. Although I'm familiar with the Castlevania series. YouTube channel I watched did like a thing where they like streamed all the Castlevania games, so I watched a fair few of those. And I also played the original NES Castlevania, but this is the first one I've beaten.
Nice. Both of you were playing on the collection on the Switch, yes? The Castlevania Anniversary Collection?
Yeah. Yes.
Do either of you have a Genesis?
Yes. I have a Genesis. It's just the only games that we have on it are Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic and Knuckles. So, I mean, it was the only games that I'm going to play.
This game goes
I just don't have a Genesis.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I do not have a Genesis. Anything I've played Sega has been through Switch re-releases at this point, or PC re-releases. But it is interesting getting into it. As much as I love the Super Nintendo, realizing that a lot of that does extend to the 16-bit era in general. But as for me, Castlevania is something I got into through the Game Boy Advance, which is definitely a very different style of Castlevania. These are the post-Symphony of the Night, Metroidvania style Castlevanias. But I definitely got interested enough in the series as a whole that I checked out the original game and Castlevania 3 on the Virtual Console. So I knew that I liked all of the games enough that when the collection came out, I really wanted to get it. So when that collection came out, I pretty much bought it day one, and I played through Super Castlevania 4. I played through Castlevania 2. I played through this because those were the games that I'd missed. So that's kind of where it comes from for me. So there are two playable characters in this game. Which one did each of you play as? We'll go back to Sammy this time.
Eric Licard. I tried both characters on the first stage and easily decided that playing as John Morris was not worth my time. That Eric is just so much better.
That's fair enough. I stuck with Eric as well. How about you, Flightsy?
I'm the king of wasting time. So I played as John Morris for the first run of the game, and then I played as Eric Lacard for the expert mode run of the game.
Awesome. So let's talk about that. What's expert mode exactly? I unlocked it, but then I realized that if I didn't save over my save state, I pretty much lost it trying to boot the game up again.
Well, all right, so this goes back to what is kind of important to mention, and that is the code, which unlocks extra mode, expert mode. Sorry, not extra. Which I think is important but we'll talk about when we talk about general experiences, because that's kind of important to my general experience. Expert mode is really just, it's pretty much just the game again, but with slightly different things, like the final boss, like one of the the final boss. Like the few I noticed is sometimes they added bats to rooms where there weren't bats before, and sometimes. There was one boss where they made him fire something faster, and I really didn't notice very many other changes. It was actually easier to play the expert run because I actually kind of knew what I was doing that time. So I found the expert mode run easier than normal.
I would like to interject. I just generally noticed more and faster enemies in expert mode. But
Did the bosses have more health or anything like that?
I don't know, to be quite honest. I didn't really play through
it's
expert
not
mode
noticeable.
because didn't hold my attention.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not noticeable if they do.
But yeah, you brought up general experiences. So what would you say is your overall impression of the game, having played it just recently for the first time?
Well, which one do you want to start?
You can go ahead and start.
Well, I think there's a reason I brought up the multiple playthroughs, because those first two playthroughs I played were kind of terrible, because save scamming through a game is not fun. And so I appreciated a lot of the graphical stuff, a lot of the ideas behind it, but but save scumming through it was just too frustrating and annoying, because you didn't want to lose a life, so you just get down to your last piece of health, and then you'd have to get through every room with one health and just scum your way through it. So it was simultaneously too easy and too hard, which is very annoying. But then I learned about this code, which I believe is you put 73 into the sound thing and 5 into the other thing. I don't know what it's called. And then you go to the menu and do the Konami code, and it unlocks 3 things, or it unlocks a few things. It unlocks expert mode immediately. It unlocks 9 lives instead of the usual 5 highest. You can now do 9 lives, and it unlocks some extra music. In the when you get the ultra power up. But most importantly, if you run out of continues, then you can actually reset the console, and it will remember where you were in the game, and it will refill everything. So basically, it meant I got infinite continues, which was the most important part, because after that, I had a lot of fun. It was still frustrating at times. There's still a few rooms and areas and stage 5 that just got a bit too out of hand and were crossed the line into frustrating. But without having to fear having to start all over, I generally felt the challenge was a lot more gratifying, and I had a lot more fun, especially on the bosses.
Yeah, so Sammy, you're the one who uncovered this code. How did you do that, or why did you start looking for?
I just remember I knew beforehand there was a code that unlocked extra music but I didn't remember what it was. So after beating stage 1, I'm just like, I remember there's a code that gives extra music, and that would be cool. So I just looked up like Castlevania Bloodlines cheats, and then I found the code and found that it does a whole lot more than adding extra music.
So that's interesting. You were actually just looking for extra music. You weren't like,
Yeah.
oh, this game's too hard, I need cheats.
No, but I'm really glad I did, because I do not like it when games have you play through the whole thing in one run.
Yeah, limited continues are something I'm okay with games being hard, but limited continues are an odd thing because you get halfway through the game before you realize how much it means, and then you're kind of back to square one.
It's a remnant of the arcades, really.
Mm-hmm. It definitely,
where
and it
continues cost you a quarter.
It's worth noting that Castlevania had arcade installments. Haunted Castle was an arcade.
I've heard.
But aside from that, I find that playing with save states is always a tough balance to have, because it definitely does make a game that is a little bit outside somebody's comfort level of challenge more accessible. But at the same time, you have to kind of develop your own rules to how to use them. I actually didn't even look into the code for this, and that probably would have been effective for me as well. Although I wonder if having too many lives would have made it a little too easy. But what I did is I pretty much just kept a save. I would save at the start of every level. And if I died, I would reload the save pretty much. So that I never actually would run out of continues. If I needed to continue, I would just go back to having my full continues at the start of the level, because you lose all your progress up to. It's sort of like having infinite continues at that.
Here's the thing: running out of lives and losing a life and running out of using a life and using a continue are the same thing. Running out of lives doesn't actually start you back at the beginning of the level. It just like losing a life, it just starts you at the beginning of the room. So really, lives are completely meaningless. It's just you have however many lives you set times 3, and that's what you get for the entire experience, unless you enter this code in which it's basically infinite lives.
Yeah. I think part of one of the things, and it's really weird because it's more psychological of anything, but one of the things that you mentioned is that when you have save states, you have to choose how you use them. And I think one of the things that was really nice about the code was then I removed the temptation to use them in situations. Like, I didn't have to come up with a rule set and like hold myself to that rule set. I could now I had the set challenge, and now I just had to beat that challenge. I didn't have to think about the temptation to just kind of cheat it.
Right, and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that save states are not the way the game was meant to be played. Now, I think the way the game was meant to be played is still open to criticism. This idea that, you ran out of continues, go back to level 1 is a little outdated, I think, to most people. But I have found sometimes establishing that can help. I know, like when I played Super Punch-Out, I did something similar where I would keep a save at the start of each fight. I wouldn't force myself to go through a whole circuit and accept the results, but I would not go to the point where it's, I'll save right before this attack and practice dodging it forever. Kind of the same thing here, because if you start saving every time, you reload your save every time you get hit and override it every time you get past an enemy, it just becomes both frustrating and unfun.
Yeah, I do think the code, though. I do think the code strikes a balance that's good for me. I think it does a good balance. That's good for me, which is good. That's good.
Yeah, certainly. So we did talk a little bit about the two playable characters. We didn't go into details about what the differences between them are. Obviously, you have John Morris, who is more the typical Castlevania character who uses the vampire killer whip. Somewhat unique to this game, he has a downward diagonal. He has a diagonal whip in air only, which is kind of odd going from Super Castlevania, where you could whip in 8 directions wherever you were.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I really would love that in this video game. Wonderful. Yeah, I didn't actually know it. I didn't know you could do that until afterwards. I looked in the manual. I was like, oh, he can downward whip too. I never used that because it's only in midair.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of a situation when I would think to do that.
Yeah, Eric has a downward attack too, which is very hard to actually hit things with without getting hit yourself.
Yeah, I never really tried it because of that.
The super jump that Eric has, however, I found incredibly useful for certain levels. It's straight up necessary for one. There is a branching
those 3 and
path
5, I believe.
There's kind of a branching path at one of those levels where if you are Eric, you need to kind of go above by super jumping, and if you're John, you need to swing across with the whip, which is something only he can do.
That would be level 3. I remember getting stuck on that, not knowing Eric could super jump.
So I actually played this game once before when I got the collection, and I replayed it leading up to this when we decided it was going to be our crossplay game. And I forgot about the jump. I picked Eric because I remembered liking him better. And I forgot about the super jump until I reached that point. I'm like, where do I go from here? And I wrote a save, died a couple times trying to jump across the gap. And I'm like, oh, wait, I can super jump and go up here instead. And it was then I'm like, oh yeah, this is a thing. But yeah, that is very useful. He also has a sort of twirl attack, which is an unusual input. You attack and then you hit the opposite direction you're facing. And he'll kind of spin the spear.
I can attest to that. It's like the Super Castlevania 4, like the twirl whip. I remember that just being really fun.
Yeah, well, that one gave you like free kind of motion of the whip. Yeah. This is a little bit more limited in its use, but
it still twirls pretty fast and blocks projectiles mainly.
Mm-hmm.
It was fun, but I guess I never really thought to use it in like a situation where it'd be useful. And then whenever I did try, like the few times I did try to use it, it didn't work very well because I tried to use it on those floating skull thingies, floating skeleton-y. The ones that are skeletons and on fire. The point is, it didn't work very well when I tried to use it. Yeah.
But sort of. Go ahead. Sorry.
All right, sorry. John is a harder character. He's more. I think that's fitting that he's more traditional Castlevania because he has like this harder feel to him. I'm glad I did John first, not only because I was doing him on the normal game, and not the extra game with expert mode with John, but also because it did feel gratifying to learn. You have to be more precise with John's whip. I found stuff that I could hit with Eric's whip. I couldn't really hit nearly as well with John's. It has like a more precise hitbox and where it actually hits. But that also made it more gratifying because John is what I used to learn the bosses. And then when I was with Eric, it felt nice to completely destroy them.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Mm.
So one of the other things that sets this game apart from some of the others in the series is that instead of the entire setting being in and around Dracula's castle, it actually takes place all over the world, which does lend to some much more interesting level design in some ways. So what was your favorite level out of those presented? We'll go to Sammy first for this one.
Level 4, the munitions factory.
Munitions factory, good one.
It's just, first of all, it has the best music track in the game. Music is a very important thing to me in terms of making a game.
Yeah, the sound is definitely a feature of Castlevania. The sound here is definitely very signature Sega Genesis, I would say.
Weird, because I
personally,
thought it sounded like a SNES game, honestly, to me.
I think more the sound effects, but the music too, I think did sound very Genesis to me. I don't know. There's reasons for that. Maybe it's just an overall aesthetic, but so why? What else do you like about the Munitions Factory?
I think the whole aesthetic being very, very wildly different from the rest of the game. But the rest of the game is a lot of castles, old style architecture, and grassy fields. And now you're all of a sudden in like this industrial wasteland, this weapons production facility. And it's like, I usually don't really enjoy those kinds of industrial themed levels, but I don't know, for some reason I just really took a liking to this level. Plus, like the conveyor belts and the pistons made for difficult, challenging obstacles and stuff. Although I did fall off of those conveyor belts one too many times.
Definitely, yeah. And that is, as far as setting, this game is set in the early 20th century, which puts it pretty far down the Castlevania timeline. We're getting close to the modern era here, albeit a fictional one.
If I believe I read in the manual, the lady who's like resurrecting Count Dracula, like in the manual it says she's like responsible for World War One.
Yes.
Yes,
it kind of presents an alternate history of sorts. Because if you know your history, the manual tells you that she assassinates the Crown Prince of Austria, and you're like, well, wait, it was the Archduke who was assassinated that started World War One. But okay, but yes, that is kind of the background information that's given here.
Yeah. So my favorite level, for going on to my favorite level, it probably also is the Munitions Factory. There's just a lot to it. I just think there's a lot of cool set pieces. So I guess I'm gonna. But I think what's more impressive is that I found myself enjoying the aesthetics in most of the levels. There was always some cool set piece. Like I remember a piece of every part of like the set pieces were very memorable. I remember when I first entered stage 2, the Atlantis Shrine. I was blown away by like the water effects and like the reflection and the very different mood from the more upbeat first level. And I think even if some of the levels get kind of samey, they all have at least like a one set piece that is interesting and that stands out in each of them, which I think is a strength. It makes it more interesting to walk through these places.
That's something I noticed too, that it to almost to the point of trying a little too hard. It did seem like almost every stage had some unique visual effect. And not all of them, I think, look as impressive today as they did in 1994. In particular, I think it's the last stage. There's that odd split mirror thing going on.
Oh, I remember that.
Annoyed me.
Is that what that is? Is that a mirror?
No, it's not. It's just the middle of the screen is like slid to the right a certain amount.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know exactly what they were going for with that.
It was
just that whole level was just optical illusions because the next room, it was upside down.
Yeah, there was the upside down, and other games have done that, and it is never fun.
Never.
I'd like to point out. I'd like to point out that they were thinking coolness factor. What's cooler than like crazy optical illusions that aren't really like many other things? Upside down, and then we'll do just a long hallway. Like them ordering that could have better. I think that the mirror thing is really cool conceptually, but playing through it made me very angry.
Maybe it's just because I was using Eric Lecard, but I didn't have that many problems with it.
I think once you get a grasp of where to look Like,
Yeah.
you just have to pay attention to where your feet are because they're displaced from the rest of your character sprite.
Yeah. Oh, this is actually one of the few notable differences in extra mode. So, oh, that's good. Anyway, so I don't know how you did that, but here's one of the differences in extra mode. I was playing with Eric, and that is that the upside down room is in the save block as the mirror room. So if you die in the upside down room, it takes you to the start of the mirror room. This must be extra game because I noticed I was having a lot of trouble in that upside down room. There was like more of like the little rotating ball thing, like every platform had one of those like invincible rotating ball things. Some had two because they were just needed more. And that made it actually really hard to get through that section. So I actually got the mirrors down to a science because I kept dying on the upside down portion with way too many of the invincible ball things, which isn't even a good enemy in the first place. And that was the most frustrating thing about expert mode.
I will say that I remember the save block is the same in that room in normal mode. You die in the upside down, you go back to the split room.
Yeah.
So that's not an expert mode thing.
Yeah, but I swear they must have added more of those ball things.
Yeah, they probably did. It's just, yeah.
So aside from music, aside from having some punishingly difficult level design, the Castlevania series is also known pretty well for its boss battles. Were there any particular bosses that stood out to you? We'll go to Philip first for this one.
Well, now I actually liked all of the bosses, and I think it's actually interesting because Sam and I actually talked about this, and it's actually interesting comparing which ones we had trouble with and which ones we didn't. Because now we get to the reason I did my final half run of the game.
He's gonna roast the heck out of me.
Yeah, because Sammy and I had a disagreement over whether or not the gear boss from the munitions factory was actually very difficult. And I was right. It's not very difficult. But it's interesting what we had trouble with because so the thing with the gear boss is he's very predictable and you can pretty much wail on him because he stands in place for a long period of time. And if you know where he's going to end up, the only tricky thing is his hitbox is small. It's like this little pearl in the middle of him, and it moves around depending on what phase it is. But once you know where it's going to go, it's really easy to just mash the button and get him done with in like a minute.
Okay, so I'd like to say that because of the stupid hitbox on that guy, my brain ended up interpreting that as I can only hit him when he's using an attack. So it turned into a lot of just waiting and then hitting him once, then waiting for his entire cycle to go through, and then hitting him once and repeat.
Yeah, I can see why you didn't like that boss. I thought it was a really cool boss because I didn't do that.
And once Philip sent me a video on him just wailing, I just wanted to throw my iPad out the window.
Yeah, I can see how the boss would be a whole lot harder with that included. For me, most of them seemed pretty okay, but I think towards the end, I was actually very disappointed with the fight against Elizabeth.
I can see that. It's very deterministic. And like she does like the same three as in the Medusa phase, she just does the same few things, and then in her actual phase, you just go. It's like the water boss, but slightly more annoying. Do you remember the water boss?
Well, and the odd thing is, neither of those gave me much trouble this time. I don't know if it was just like muscle memory from the last time I played the game, but I pretty much knew to just rush them and to turn around immediately and hit them when they go to the other side of the screen. And it's just doing that like over and over.
Yeah. It didn't take very long. Once I realized she was just like the water guy, it was pretty easy. like once I figured out what she was doing, it was pretty easy to beat her. It was just kind of annoying, and that's kind of a shame. And then we have Drac. Actually, here's something because I didn't really get a pulse on this. What do you guys think of the final boss, like Dracula himself?
I mean, I actually kind of liked him, just the 3 phases and everything. It was like kind of easy-ish, but also like stressful because of how much damage I ended up taking at some points. Although the first phase can be pretty easily cheesed, if I'm not mistaken. If you just hit him as soon as he appears, he doesn't even get the chance to attack you.
Yeah,
So this is the thing.
Coming from other games in the series, that first phase of Dracula is usually a lot more memorable, with him teleporting and shooting fireballs. And usually you have to have some pretty strict timing to avoid getting hit, but they just gave you a nice window to hit him before he does anything.
And now this is when I roast the heck out of Philip, saying that he didn't get that.
Yeah, I didn't understand that. So I learned the precise timings, which took a while, and I learned the precise timings to dodge all 3 of his attacks. And also I learned the order he does them all in, because it's 100% deterministic. He does them all in the same order. It's a pretty long sequence, though. And yeah, so I learned all of that, and I learned how to do it all with John, because I was playing as John, and I learned him how to do it. I had fun, but it took me like a day, not like a full day, but like I actually had to step away and wait till the next day to pick it back up to finally get it down, and finally beat him, which made Dracula seem a lot more gratifying to beat than he probably actually was. But I think, again, the thing with Dracula, he's long, but like his attacks get so basic. Like in his demon form, he he just does this simple loop in his like wizard form, and in his demon form, he literally has like one attack he spams for each of his demon phases. And the last demon phase is, for some reason, him just jumping up and down, which is the easiest phase to die. I don't know why they kept thinking this is the Pisa boss, the Tower of Pisa boss also does this. I don't know why they keep thinking that's a hard thing to dodge. And it was harder to dodge in the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I just don't know why they keep thinking that's a difficult attack.
Yeah, I would say overall there are some pretty fun bosses in this game, but I'm not sure if it lives up to the best the series has to offer. That is a high standard, but then again,
I would. Sorry, I know I'm interrupting, but I would like to say, as a newcomer, someone who hasn't experienced the high quality bosses, I thought they were pretty good. Like compared to a lot of the other games I've played, I thought they were pretty good. Most of them had some kind of memorable premise. I remember the Versailles. Like, I don't like Stage 5 very much, but I remember it was kind of interesting to see like the princess fall down, and even though you knew she was going to turn into a monster, it was still kind of cool to see it happen. And like, I don't know, I found myself engaged with bosses a fair bit. So like, for someone who hasn't used to the standard, I still think they did pretty good on bosses. But that's probably just because I haven't experienced any other Castlevania bosses.
Sure. And I think on the whole, it's still, miles ahead of what a lot of other games do. It was interesting, too, that every stage typically has a mini boss, sometimes more than one, I think, which is an interesting way to break up the pacing.
Okay, I'd like to add something. The like face pillar illusion boss in Chapter 5 was really cool.
Oh,
it was pretty cool.
I remember that one. Yeah,
it was kind of frustrating to figure out, but yeah, it was pretty cool to do. But it was kind of was a bit frustrating to figure out how to deal with it because I was kind of confused on what it even was. But once figured out, it was pretty cool. Actually, I just thought of something because the pillar boss, it does the exact same thing. A lot of the bosses in here are deterministic instead of like RNG based, which is interesting. Like you can learn exactly what to do to face them, and you can like get it down to a science. Whereas a lot of other bosses I know in other games have more of an RNG element, which means it's kind of interesting. It kind of lets Castlevania be a bit tougher with its bosses because you can kind of memorize the exact coordination, but it also means it focuses less on reacting to what the boss does and more focuses more on knowing what the boss does, which I think makes it very interesting and fun to learn. Like it has advantages. Like it sounds bad when I say it like that, but it has advantages because it's fun and because it makes it interesting to learn. And then when I went in my second run with Eric, it was kind of fun just to know exactly what to do. But it is an interesting difference approach because I noticed it was fairly absent compared to what I'm more used to, which is a more RNG based system where you have to react to an attack because you don't quite know what it's going to be.
Right, right, and you even see that at the towards the end when you fight Death. Primarily, he is forcing you through a gauntlet of all the previous stage bosses.
Actually, only 3 of the previous stage bosses.
Yeah, a couple of them. I'm not sure why some of them made the cut, and I thought it was random because he has the thing with the cards.
I played through it in both modes. It's the same 3 bosses. But they're like weaker versions. Like they have less health. Those ones I noticed with less health. But yeah, it's the same 3 bosses. And also I noticed you only have to fight like the boss fight, and there's like a save between the gauntlet and the Reaper himself because I died to the actual Reaper both times. Yeah. It isn't interesting though. Because I guess it's just an interesting difference in boss design then. Standard, I think it's interesting to kind of think about how that, even though it might seem like a very arbitrary thing, does affect how you process and think about beating the bosses.
Yeah, no, that is definitely the case. I think a lot of other games in the series are more what you'd associate with a standard boss battle, where they do have patterns per se, but the patterns vary each time, and you have to kind of recognize what's going on actively.
Yeah, definitely pros and cons to each approach. I think Bloodlines approach makes it more favorable for like speed runs or like trying to get really good at the game. Whereas like with a more RNG approach, you have to get very more skilled at the boss. We have to like get like skilled at specifically kind of reacting to it instead of like just knowing what to do. That's how to explain.
I guess one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the sub weapons. Compared to previous games in the series, they're a little bit different in that each sub-weapon has a special move that can be performed by number one, there's a dedicated sub-weapon button instead of just pressing up and attack like you usually would. But pressing up and the sub-weapon button will do a special move unique to each sub-weapon. So I just want to know what your favorite weapon was, and obviously there is one that's kind of straight up better but limited in availability. We'll go back to Sammy first for this.
I mean, I will say that I felt like all of the up A attacks did the same thing. Just shoot something massive straight forwards.
Yeah, with some variation.
But I will say so I only really used the standard sub-weapons because I felt they were more applicable to different situations. But I ended up using the axe, liking the axe for its vertical range and just ability to be a projectile and hit stuff that's not quite within your reach.
Yeah, the axe is a staple in almost every Castlevania game because...
I will say, I kind of wish the stopwatch from past games came back because it's just a helpful item in general.
Sure. I don't remember using the stopwatch much though, because that always costs so many hearts to use.
It costs 5. I
Does
remember.
it?
I believe
I
so. I've
thought
been
it
playing
drained
Castlevania
over
3
time, but
recently. No, it uses 5 and then freezes for like 5 to 10 seconds or something. I don't remember.
oh, that's much better than I remember it being. How about you, Philip? Did you have a favorite of the sub weapons?
I would probably also we have a similar taste. I like the axe. It just has a nice arc to it. And again, I like that each of the sub weapons have like more of an agility, have like more of a they're more range based. They more like cover your bases with stuff that you can't do with your standard attack. But something interesting, I found myself using them less and less as I got more accustomed to the regular controls. I just kind of started forgetting about them and just using the normal weapon more.
You can
I don't know.
definitely enter that mindset where you hoard your their gems in this game, oddly enough, instead of hearts like they are every other time. But you save them all for the boss and then realize you don't even need them.
Yeah. I think I think it's not even that. Like, yeah, I somewhat hoarded them, but I also used them fairly liberally. I just got to the point where I got more comfortable with just using the whip or spear all the time, and more the spear because the spear is more versatile. And I actually got to the point where I just didn't think to use them because like I just felt like plus when you get your spear leveled up enough, they do less damage than the spear. So I don't know. I got a bit. I don't know. I just gotta stopped using them around a little bit through my extra mode run, except for specific circumstances where it was helpful.
I do remember unloading a lot of powered up boomerangs into Dracula's demon form because interestingly enough, he actually like flies backward when you hit him. So I kind of just shoved him to the corner and kept pelting him with projectiles and
I mean,
didn't have to do anything else.
yeah. I mean, I pretty much uh when it came to the demon form, I consistently forgot that there was like a special sub weapon move. So I consistently forgot that it existed. When it came to the demon form, it was basically became turn based. Like he'd do his attack, and then I'd do my attack, which pushed him all the way back to square one. So he'd do his attack, and then I did my attack, which pushed him back to square one, and it basically became like turn based.
Yeah, that's a lot
Yeah.
like what you were saying with the bosses having pretty strict patterns is it very much does turn into okay, now I dodge the thing, then I hit him, now I dodge the next attack.
Will say on the subject of special weapons, I do have to give special mention to the boomerang as well, because it does have a significantly long range, even longer than like your spear. So
Mm-hmm.
that one was good for hitting it, although it does do less damage. So you essentially have to get it on both forward and back in order to deal the same amount of damage as one hit.
Yeah, it is interesting to note that traditionally that is a cross. I don't know why it's not a cross in this one. I did not look into if Sega was for some reason stricter than Nintendo on putting religious imagery, even though
I mean, the
way more
boomerang does
comfortable
make
with blood.
inherent more sense.
Yeah,
It does.
I hear you. I hear you guys talking about like, man, it's weird that it's not this in this game, and all I can think of is jewels make a lot more sense than hearts. Like in my head, a
I mean,
boomerang makes more sense than a.
the hearts is a long-standing thing that confuses everyone at first because you think the hearts are health,
Yeah.
and you're like, sweet, health is everywhere. No, those are for your sub weapons.
Yeah. See, I like not being confused.
Oh, so much to the point. A little bit on topic, but I do highly recommend to any fan of Castlevania checking out Bloodstained Curse of the Moon. And that game, despite being very much based on Castlevania, does use hearts as health, and that confuses the crap out of me.
Been meaning to try out that for a long time.
Specifically, if you are a fan of Castlevania 3, both those games, it actually got a sequel, take very much after Castlevania 3. And to the point, I would actually argue it's better than Castlevania 3 because changing characters is so much snappier. You can do it on the drop of a hat.
Yeah, I will say I've just been playing through Castlevania 3 after beating Bloodlines because I wanted more. And I love the idea that you have different characters you can switch out to, but I don't understand why you can only take one of them. I went and got Alucard, but then Grant's just like, I'm head out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit
Just makes
odd.
no sense.
It does. I think what they were going for there was on different playthroughs, you take different routes. Because typically you won't even run into all three.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible. Alucard and Sypha are on two different routes.
Yeah, something like that. But that is a good transition. After playing that game, since we all did play on the Castlevania Anniversary Collection, does this make you excited to check out more Castlevania?
I'd say, yeah. I mean, like, the Castlevania Anniversary Collection is basically like an all-stars collection of the 2D, like, platformer Castlevanias, except without Rondo of Blood, because I think Sony has some form of claim on that for some reason. It's only ever been released on...
I don't know if they specifically have a claim on Rondo of Blood itself, because that was a PC Engine game.
Right, but
they
here's the thing.
Publish the recent remake of it and Symphony of the Night. So they have a
It
claim
and Symphony
on
of
that
the Night
remake.
have only ever been re-released on PlayStation consoles, though.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like there's some sort of behind the table, under the table deal between Konami and Sony.
Behind the table.
Which is just annoying because I want to play both of those games, but I don't own a PlayStation.
There is definitely a deal with that remake. I don't know that there's anything long-standing that would prevent Konami from re-releasing it elsewhere. As a matter of fact, we have one other place we can play it, which is the TurboGrafx Mini.
Oh, well, thank goodness. I'll do that one. Sorry.
I mean, or I
think-
could play the really hard SNES version.
Yeah.
That's also a thing.
Yeah. Dracula X does still exist.
I do think this gets somewhat into conspiratory territory, which isn't realm I quite want to like. I'm not disagreeing because like there is definitely circumstantial evidence for it, but I would say we don't really. We should probably disclaimerize that we don't actually have any like legitimate proof of behind the table deal.
I just kind of like think that I don't know. I'm just kind of mad that I can't play that game that I want to play. Like since I've heard of Castlevania.
I have yet to play it myself too. I would like to get a TurboGrafx Mini if they become available for the retail price. Especially as I've said, I've been getting into all the 16-bit games that aren't Super Nintendo, and the TurboGrafx is still very much a blind spot for me. And
TurboGrafx also says nothing about Symphony of the Night, which was originally released on PlayStation 1 and then only ever re-released on PlayStation consoles.
Right. Yeah. Symphony of the Night is another one that people are clamoring for. We do
it's such an iconic game. It should be more widely available.
We do have rumors of a Game Boy Advance collection.
Now that I would love. Those games I've wanted to check out for quite a while as well.
And those are the ones that got me into Castlevania. But how about you, Philip? You said this was actually your first Castlevania game. So does this make you want to play more? You have the collection. Are you eager to jump into Super Castlevania or Castlevania 1 or 2?
I would like to, well, it's complicated because like on the one end, I don't have, I'm about to enter college. I don't really have a lot of time to play things. And I already have to play the next Retro Rewind game. And I'm playing through Baba Is You as well. And then I also want to do stuff for my YouTube channel. So that's going to also take up gaming time. So I wouldn't say that I'm going to jump right into a Castlevania immediately, especially since I'm pretty sure it'll come up on Retro Rewind again. I did vastly enjoy what I liked. Like whenever you hop into a new franchise, there's this weird worry that you might just not like it. But I did like it, and I enjoyed playing it, and I am definitely excited to play more. But I think I will wait until just this is mostly just scheduling thing, so I guess it's not that important. But I would say I'm probably going to wait for the next Retro Rewind Castlevania to jump in it again, because I think it's somewhat inevitable that it'll come up again on Retro Rewind. So I figured I'd play it then.
Okay, that is fair enough. I will say that my first impression of this game was, despite playing both of them far after release, colored a lot by comparing it to Super Castlevania 4, which I do consider to be the better game by quite a wide margin. Not to say that this game is bad. And the thing that surprised me was actually that I enjoyed this game a lot more than I remembered the first time I played it. When I played both of them for the first time, I was like, oh yeah, the Super Nintendo one is way better. But this time I was like, oh, I didn't give this game enough credit the first time I played it.
I can't really attest to that, because like I've only played like the first 2 levels of Super Castlevania 4, but now that I have played Bloodlines, I want to play Super Castlevania 4. So
definitely. I would actually, for anybody interested in the series, particularly in the classic form of the series, maybe not so much drawn to the Metroid elements, I would recommend starting with Super Castlevania 4. I would say that it is, other than perhaps Rondo of Blood, the best that the series has to offer, and at the moment more accessible than Rondo of Blood.
I mean, what I'm going to do is I'm going to boot up my SNES Mini and use the SNES controller for it, rather than playing it on the collection, because that sounds cool to me.
Well, in a bit of irony, because I have the Nintendo Switch Online member SNES controller, I was actually playing this on the Switch with a Super Nintendo controller.
Oh, yeah, I don't have that.
I don't know if
that's
some form
it says
of...
that pretty much any controller is better than the Genesis one, so...
I don't know if that's some form of heresy to people, though, to play a Genesis game with a Super Nintendo controller.
Yeah, but the Genesis controller was just, like, bad.
I mean, it's not like I could have played it with a Genesis controller. I actually played it with the Pro controller, which I probably would have, thinking back, I probably would have liked it better with the SNES controller, but I didn't think of it at the time, especially since it wasn't a SNES. Like, if it was like the SNES game, I probably would have thought, oh, I'll have a SNES controller, I'll use it anyway. But since it was Genesis, I never crossed my mind that maybe the SNES would be a better controller for this.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we've about exhausted the topic, so just around our little round table here, do you give Castlevania Bloodlines 2 thumbs up, 1 thumb up, no thumbs up, 1 thumb down even? We'll go back to Sammy first.
I think I'll give it a 1.5 thumbs up.
1.5, all right.
But like I very much enjoyed the game, and it's like I'm getting back into retro games around now, and it's just been really fun. Because like you don't really get this level of difficulty in a lot of recent games. So it's just fun to challenge myself like that.
How about you, Philip?
I don't know. If I had to do, what are my options on how's the thumb scale work again?
Well, Sammy apparently has 1.5 thumbs. I don't know how many you have.
Well, I have I don't know. I'm never good with rating things. I would say I have a satisfactory amount of thumbs up. I think it was a good first Castlevania game, and I do bad with rating systems. Plus, you should know how I feel about it if you watch the episode. So I'm just going to summarize that, and that I think it was a satisfactory, good first. I think that I had a satisfactory, good first Castlevania game that I enjoyed. That's how many thumbs I had. Just that sentence in thumb.
All right.
Just pretend that's a thumb.
You have the number of thumbs you have, I guess. I'm probably pretty firmly in the 1 thumb up camp, unless maybe I have an extra half thumb to give too. But definitely a solid game. I don't think you can go wrong with it. You can do better in the Castlevania series. I do feel like the game's pretty underappreciated. You know, it did come out in between Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night. And that following Super Castlevania 4. And if you're a Castlevania fan, one of those 3 is your favorite. Bloodlines probably does not have a chance against those. But all the same, I think it was a good playthrough. I'm actually glad I got a chance to play through it again. Like I said, I enjoyed it more the second time because I wasn't, too busy comparing it to others. So that's about all we have for tonight. But if you enjoyed listening to this episode and you would like to participate, join our Discord. You can find our website, retrologic.games. You'll find links to the Discord there. You'll find links to the Discord in the description of this video and any other videos on the channel or wherever you are listening to the podcast. Our next game will actually be Claymates, which has just come to the Nintendo Switch online app. So it should be readily available to all you Nintendo Switch owners. If you would like to join the discussion on Discord, head over there. If you would like to be a part of the next recording for Community Crossplay, join the Discord and let us know. Any final words from either of you?
Have a very Castlevania New Year's.
Okay. Sammy, how about you?
I can't top that. Just
what is a man? A miserable.
What is a man but a miserable little pile of secrets?
All right. Thanks for tuning in. Goodbye for now.